Welcome to Economics for Everyone. In this video, we'll see what should be the strategy for the bidders in the second prize auction. Mr. Pink is one among the 4 bidders for the purchase of a heritage car. For him, the true value of the car is $11,000. Now the question arises, what value should he bid? Should he bid for more than $11,000 or less than $11,000? Or should he bid at his true value? So here we'll try to find what strategy should Mr. Pink adopt, or rather any bidder in a second prize auction do. So first let's take the case where his true value of the car is higher than values bid by all the bidders. We know in this type of auction, the bidder with the highest bid wins but has to pay a price of the second highest bidder. We saw in the previous video the second highest bidder was Mr. Red, who had put his bid at $10,000. So Mr. Pink had to pay $10,000 for the car. Just to clarify, in case a question comes up in your mind, it is enough that if we take only the second highest bidder, all other bids are lower than Mr. Red, so we're not worried about them, because the highest bidder, that is Mr. Pink, will have to pay the price of Mr. Red only. So let's begin. First, let's see part A of case 1, where Mr. Pink bids at his true value at $11,000. He wins the auction and has to pay a price of $10,000, and hence he enjoys the utility or surplus of $1,000. We can see it from the graph where bidders are shown on the x-axis, Mr. Pink and Mr. Red, and bids on the y-axis. We can see that Mr. Pink enjoys a surplus of $1,000. Now let's move on to part B of case 1, where Mr. Pink bids higher than his true value at $12,000. He wins the auction and pays $10,000. His utility or surplus measured from the true value is still the same, that is $1,000. It is not $2,000 because we have to measure the surplus from his true value. So we can see from the graph his true value is somewhere here at 11,000, and the surplus he enjoys is again 1,000. In part C, Mr. Pink bids a bit lower than his true value. He still wins the auction and has a surplus of 1,000 again, because it is measured from the true value, not from his bid. So somewhere it was true value was 11,000 and he enjoys a surplus of 1,000 in this case again. Now in the part D, he bids much lower than his true value. Now he loses the auction because he is no longer the highest bidder and hence has a zero utility. Here he gains no utility or surplus because he has lost the auction. So we see from the graphs that putting your bid equal to the true value is a weakly dominant strategy, because in this case he was having a surplus of 1,000. Even when he bid higher than his true value, again it was 1,000, and when a bit lower than his true value, it was 1,000. Here in the last case, it was 0. So we can say that bidding at true value is a weakly dominant strategy. Now let's move on to case 2, where his true value is less than the highest bidder. Let's assume the case where the true value of Mr. Pink is the same, which was $11,000, but Mr. Red now bids his at $12,000. So firstly, in part A, Mr. Pink bids at his true value, which was 11,000. He loses the auction and has a zero utility. In part 2, that is part B, Mr. Pink bids at less than his true value. Again, he loses the auction because Mr. Red is the highest bidder and has zero utility. We can see from the graph that Mr. Pink's bid is lower than Mr. Red, and so he loses the auction and has no utility. In part C, we see that Mr. Pink bids a bit higher than his true value, but it is still lower than the bid of Mr. Red. And so again, he loses the auction and has a zero utility. Now, in part D, he bids much higher than his true value. His true value was 11,000, but he bids at 13,500. Now, he wins the auction. Let's see from the graph, his true value was somewhere here, 11,000. He has won the auction, but he has to pay a price of $12,000, while his value for the car was $11,000, and thus he has a negative utility of $1,000. So now we'll compare all the graphs of the case 2 and see what should be the best strategy. In part A, we saw he got zero utility. In part B, again he got zero. And in part C, again he got zero. While in part D, he got negative utility of 1,000. By comparing these four parts, we see that if your value is less than the other bidders, it is again best to bid on your true value, or at least as equal to the other cases. So, we see in the second price auction, it does not matter what other players are bidding. Your strategy should always to be bid at your true value. I hope you got an understanding of what strategy should you apply when you face a real situation of a second price auction. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you everyone.